Hey everyone, welcome back. In this episode, we have a very, very special guest, Justin Kramer, who you really have to admire, not only because he's quite accomplished in the commercial space, but also because he's one of those people whose words truly come from a place of experience and lots of practical knowledge. Justin is a filmmaker first and foremost, but also he's a director, a writer, a producer who worked on multiple projects for HBO, CNN, MTV, and many more. He's also a father, a husband, and the CEO of the Film House, which is a production company in Doha. In this episode, Justin talks about his childhood growing up, moving to Doha and continuing his career here, his inspiration, and much more. I think this is an insightful episode, a fun and entertaining one, so make sure you stay tuned until the end, and yeah, I hope you like it. Yeah, welcome to the show, Justin.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on. I have to admit, I listened to the last podcast.
Okay.
And I was incredibly intimidated coming on. I was like, okay, I have to follow up someone who is like an absolute genius talking about psychology and semiotics and all these things. And I was like, what am I going to talk about? I don't even know. But I'm very happy to be on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, I want to like kind of introduce, like I want you to introduce yourself and like talk about yourself. And I'm actually really interested in your story because I feel like we both met at a certain time in our lives where it's like it's the present, and I'm really interested in who you are as Justin. Like you're American, you lived in the US, and so I'm interested in like your story growing up in the US and like what was your childhood like? What were your dreams growing up, and like what did you want to do?
How long is this podcast?
As long as you want to be.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, my name is Justin Kramer. Mm-hmm. I was born and raised in New Jersey, which is just about 2 hours south of New York. My childhood was awesome. I grew up on a farm essentially. We had every kind of animal you can imagine. We had like 13 dogs at all times. My dad would bring home random animals from auctions, and we had a pig that lived in our bathroom in our house at one point.
Okay.
We had chinchillas and turkey and everything you could imagine. It's like a funny farm, so I had a really cool childhood, and my grandfather was an artist. He was a very famous. I mean, he was a really well accomplished calligrapher, and he worked in printing presses and all these kind of things. So growing up, I was really interested in art. My father, he's a well driller. He's a very like big, strong, manual labor type guy. My brothers are the same, and I was the middle child, so I was very different than them, and I went the route of art. So I would go and study art with my grandfather, and I would go to art school and lessons and all these kind of things, and I think that really informed my future in a way. I didn't realize it at the time, but visual language was very important to me, and then as I grew up, as a teenager, I had very little ambition. I was very much like, I wanted to party. I was really into music. I thought I would be a musician.
Making that, yeah.
Yeah. And then later I thought I'd be a poet, and then I thought I'd be all these different things. And it wasn't until my parents bought me a video camera. I can't remember what year it was. I must have been like 15, 16 years old. And I didn't have much money, and I was very much interested in going to concerts every time I got a chance. So I thought, okay, what's the best way to go to concerts for free? And I would start writing to all the bands and the record labels of the ones I liked, and I'd say, listen, I have a camera, give me a backstage pass or just free entry, and I'll film your show for free.
Oh my God! Okay.
So I started. That's how I started, really. And it was a lot of like punk bands, and my favorite band at the time was Kid Dynamite. They were a Philly band, and I was filming with them. And then I was filming with people like Snapcase and H2O and these sort of like punk hardcore bands. And that sort of like became more and more like, wow, you know, this is something I could probably do.
And I assume, like, sorry to interrupt, but I assume at that time nobody had, like, there weren't a lot of professionals who were shooting these concerts.
No, there was no one. There was never anyone at these concerts like filming them. There were a lot of photographers and stuff. And I'm, you know, obviously I was not a professional under any.
Was it a film camera or was it a digital
No, it was video.
camera?
It was like really early days of what was it? High 8. So it was a Sony High 8 camera that I got, and it was like one of the first like sort of camcorders.
Oh, so you had the little screen.
Yeah, like a prosumer camcorder, and it had like, you know, the most interesting function it had was that you could add on-screen text. So of course, like whenever I was filming my friends, I would put something really offensive on the screen, and they'd have no idea that it was there until they saw it later.
So funny.
But yeah, then I took like media courses in high school, and then I was just a loser for a while, and I was working in a warehouse in a freezer where I would drive forklifts for fresh cut flowers from around the world.
Really?
And I had I was in a band at the time, but I again had no ambition. But I had a girlfriend at the time who she wasn't very happy with my lifestyle at the time, and she said, "Listen, I'm moving to New York. I'm gonna go to school in New York." I had graduated high school like, 3 or 4 years before that. College was like, I was way too punk rock for college. I was like, I don't need a piece of paper to tell me I know how to do something.
But I guess at that time it was valuable, right? Like, when was this?
I mean, I graduated high school in 2001.
Okay.
So
actually, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Everybody was going to college. I just was like, no way, I want to party. I want to just hang out. And but she said, look, if you wanna make this work, you're gonna have to move to New York with me. And I was like, well, what the hell am I gonna do there? Like, I don't know anyone in New York. And I was just like, okay, cool. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll go to school. Maybe I'll finally go to school. And I found a film school in Tribeca, and I decided to enroll, and I started there. And then within my first semester of university, I got a job working with Tribeca Film Festival, filming all the red carpets and all the movie premieres and stuff like that. And then I really didn't need to go to school anymore, but I decided to finish it, and I went through with it because I was the first person in my family to ever go to university and get a degree. And
really?
Yeah, and then I started working for MTV and HBO and VH1 and all these networks.
Yeah, I saw that actually. I mean, it's amazing, man. You've done a lot, honestly.
It was a wild ride. And then, I was working for Tribeca Film Festival. In 2009, we got a call that they were going to start a film festival in Doha. And they asked me and a couple of my friends and people I knew from New York to come out and help get it off the ground. I came here not knowing. Well, actually, I didn't even know it was in the Middle East.
That's also what I wanted to ask. Okay, so that's your life in the US, right?
Yeah.
And okay, so there was this big shift where you had to move into from the total west into the opposite east, right?
Yeah.
And at that time probably Doha wasn't Doha right now, the world wasn't as it wasn't as established as it is now, and it's still obviously developing, it's still growing. And so that is something that I wanted to ask, how did you feel with this big shift, totally different culture, different language, different people? I mean, it's just a different world over here.
Well, I mean,
maybe now it's similar a little bit more, but yeah.
A little bit. I mean, well, so I have to admit, I didn't know I was coming to the Middle East.
Okay.
When they called me, I was quite inebriated, and they said, we want you to go to Doha for this festival. And I said, yeah, cool, I'm going. And then the next day they called and they said, okay, send us your passport scan. And I said, I don't even have a passport. Why would I need a passport? And they're like, you're going to Doha. And I'm like, well, where's Doha?
Yeah.
And they're like, it's in Qatar. I'm like, what the fuck is Qatar? I've never even heard of this place. And they're like, it's near Saudi Arabia. I was like, what did I agree to? But then I was like, cool, it's an experience. And I went with my best friend, this guy Manuel. He's a Puerto Rican guy from New York. and we came together, and that made it easy for me because I was like, it's
you
gonna
had
be
somebody with you who you knew, and like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And we arrived, and the next day we started work, and we were working out of the Museum of Islamic Art.
Okay.
And obviously, I was like a fish out of water here because I was probably at the time the only man in Qatar who had hair down to here, covered in tattoos, like just looked like a total freak.
Yeah.
So people thought I was insane, you know, that I was getting looks in the supermarket like I was the devil, you know. I was like, oh, what is up with all these people? I'm like totally normal, but I wasn't. But actually my first day of work, I met my now wife. It was her first day of work too.
That's awesome.
Oh.
We met, and once my contract ended, at the end of the year, I was going back. And I went back to New York, and I was like, I need to find a way to get back there because I want to be with this girl, you know. And then I got a call, and they said they were going to start a film institute, and they wanted me to come and teach filmmaking workshops. So I was like, yes, I'm down. Whatever, I'll come. I'll be a janitor. I don't care. I'm going. I want to be with this girl. And then that was sort of the launch point. And then next thing you know, I opened a company here, and
now it's flourishing, working with like worldwide, organizations like Qatar Airways, Al Jazeera, and very large institutions. And you told me like there hasn't been like a continent that you haven't shot.
Yeah, we have officially shot on every continent on Earth, even Antarctica.
Oh my God, that's crazy. I'm really curious though. Like when you first arrived to Qatar, was there any other filmmaker that you encounter and that you get to like? No filmmakers.
There wasn't even a film there was no film was not a profession here, and there were no filmmakers. So that was sort of like what our mandate was when they started the institute, was to give these workshops and empower local people to take filmmaking as well. It wasn't really for a profession at first. It was more like to give them the education and the skills to tell their stories in the visual landscape. And it was really cool because all these people had amazing stories. It doesn't matter where you're from or your background or anything. Like everyone has a story to tell or an imagination. So it was very interesting for me to work with these young people, and they knew nothing about film, but over time people started to get more savvy. People started to understand the industry, and we slowly but surely built up the industry. I mean, there were production companies here. There's one like Resolution Films.
Yeah.
They were here way before I got here, but they were only servicing the local commercial market, and they weren't really trying to raise the bar or do anything outstanding because there was no competition. So they didn't have to do great stuff. They could just do what they were doing because no one else was doing it. And then when we started this company, it was very much like, we want to make world-renowned, international quality films here. Not just film, like commercials, films, corporate, music videos, whatever. But to a level that you would expect in the States or in Europe or in, parts of Asia that had like, hundreds of years of cinema experience. And that was really what I wanted to do. And it happened sort of organically, and this thing actually started with me and my partner in crime, Omar Khalifa.
Yeah. Cool. We're gonna have hopefully soon on the show.
Yeah, you should. He's good.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I was saying, working over there for so many years, do you think that your like how we talked about in the previous episode, like semiotics, have you ever thought about your visual style being affected by Qatar, or do like the way that because technically you got better in filmmaking while you're in Qatar, right? Like you improved while you're working there. So where do you get your inspiration? Do you look at inspiration on the internet and looking at how other people do it in the US, or do you kind of develop your own visual language while you're living under the culture of Qatar?
Also before you answer, I wanted to build off of what Kai said. Is like, I also, when I looked at your work, right, at your website, and I could notice this like kind of mixture and combination between this like kind of Eastern style, and at the same time that work has been adapted into Qatar's and Eastern culture, traditions, and actors, because you have to, right?
Yeah.
You have to bring Qatari actors, you have to bring Eastern Arabic music at some point, and you have to work within the realms of the how the culture is structured now. And so it's really interesting how your work is, kind of, displayed in a way that is, like combines this mixture between this like Western style and Eastern style, and it creates this unique voice, honestly.
Well, I appreciate that. I never really
totally
thought about it, to be
so
honest.
how did that come about, like
I mean, I would say, okay, when it comes to influences, like, all my life I've been interested in art. The traditional styles of art, painting and drawing and sculpting and things like that, but also photography, filmmaking, any kind of visual language and art form I'm always very interested in. And I would say, where do I draw reference? Anywhere, everywhere, and anything. Like, I like to think that I have a photographic memory as well. I have zero ability to remember dates or time or, age I was at when certain things happened. But I can recall images from when I was a child with great clarity. So, down to the shadows in images. And, I don't know if it's like a defect in my brain, which maybe influences it a bit. But I think, now, if we're talking about very direct, where do I draw a reference? I mean, I love Instagram. I'm an Instagram junkie. I have like, the little save function, and I have like little folders of stuff. I have one of fashion, one of shadows, one of documentary, and I love just looking at images, and I have a huge book collection, like photography books and filmmaker books and stuff like this. But I don't know. I mean, I think if I see a beautiful image, I respect it and I appreciate it, and I hope that I can sort of achieve the same. I would also say that nowadays I don't watch many films, and I don't watch much TV or anything like that, because I find I did a course with Werner Herzog called the Rogue Film School.
Okay.
He's the most, in my opinion, the most important documentary filmmaker ever. He's made probably 100 films now. Most famous for Grizzly Man and lots of films with like Klaus Kinski but anyway, I did a course with him, and he's notoriously insane, and he said, he even said, like, I don't watch films because I don't want them to subconsciously leak into my work. I want my work to be unique to my own voice, and I really believe that, and I believe that the more you watch films, even if you don't mean to, you find that popping up in your writing. Something you've seen, or a frame, or a style, or something like that, and it can be by accident. And I don't think there's anything wrong with paying homage to what's been done, but I do think that if you're going to have a unique voice,
you have to get away as much as possible.
Exactly. So that's why I think alternative sources of inspiration are great. That's why I think photography is so important to me, because a still image can say so much more than a moving image, in my opinion, because you are left to decide what that picture means. There's no one talking and telling you what to think, or there's not a filmmaker's sort of voice on that, where it's like, it's expositional, or it's in line with the cinematic devices where the setup and payoff. Like I love photographers like William Eggleston and Joel Sternfeld. Like, there's this one image that I love particularly. It's a house that's on fire, and it's in the background, and in the foreground is a roadside stand where they're selling pumpkins, and there's a firefighter standing there holding a pumpkin, like looking at these pumpkins while this house burns down in the background. And for me, like, that image is so strong, and it's so, like, I want to know everything there is to know about that picture. And I feel like that picture does more for me than a 2-hour film that's neatly wrapped in a package and has a bow at the end, and you know what you're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
Oh.
that's.
I don't know if I might have gotten off track.
No.
That's actually so interesting because it kind of proved the idea of less is more. It's like you don't want that much information because you want to give like a space for people to imagine instead of just feeding them all the information that you want them to think.
Kai, do you know that I think that there's a concept called curiosity gap, right? And that is used in science and physics and chemistry and a lot of things, and it's also used in visual arts. And what you do is that you show the audience something, and then you leave the rest empty for them to kind of put in the pieces together and fill in the gap, right? Like the picture about the pumpkin that you said. And a lot of successful photographers, they take that concept and apply it, and that's why their stories are amazing. For instance, they show you kind of half a person, or they show you know, a picture of an umbrella and you kind of don't see what's below it, and they play with light and shadows to hide things. And this concept is like absolutely amazing, and it's something that gives like a lot of, like, your work gives it so much more depth and, you know, meaning than it actually could have, you know, because you can allow for a lot more possibilities than you would have, right? And yeah, I also, like, going back to your idea about like I also think I am a visual person as well, right? Like remembering things, and I also remember things in, I don't know about you, Kai, but like I also remember things in the form of imagery, right? And I also have folders on Instagram of like, whenever I see I'm following like all different artists and all different people and people that actually like, every time I see them I just save the picture and I look at it later, and there's something I like about this image. It's like, I like the lighting on this image, I like the shadows here, I like how that guy was dressed, I like the color, the art direction, everything. Like I like there's always something that I like about image, and whenever I see that I just save that image and I can have these libraries. And yeah, I don't know, like what's it like for you, Kai? Like, where do you also
I do these kind of practices back before. Like I used to save a lot of stuff just because I wasn't sure what did I like before. And when I was in university, I tend to look at a lot of stuff just because I want to know more about myself. It's like I wasn't really trying to get inspiration because like I watched the film, I really liked the film, but I was like, okay, it's a good film, but what did I like about it? So I started to look at cinematographies, and then I think I saw it from Chris Do. Like he said that you have to, even if you just like an image, you have to really pinpoint what is it about this image that you like. For example, do you like the color? Do you like the shadow or certain elements of the film of the image? So then when I look at all of the image that I like, I can know, okay, I like shadow, I like, I don't know, these neon style and stuff. And eventually I could develop my own style based on all of these certain elements that I like from these specific pictures. But then after a while, I just stop looking at too much stuff. Just actually kind of similar to you, like Justin, like I don't want to get affected by too much other people's ideas. Like even if I came up with my own original ideas, I mean, I thought it was my own original ideas. Actually, like a million people have thought about it before already, but I would like to think that I'm the first one who ever thought about it. And so I can execute it in a way that I'm not affected by anyone, even if it's kind of similar to other people, but I want like zero effect from other people. Like I just wanted to know how it's like if I were to be the first one who did it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it comes back to that saying that no idea is original anymore.
Yeah.
And
nothing is original.
but I don't agree with that, because I think that an idea is almost always original as long as you're not directly copying something you've already seen. Like if you intend to copy something, then yes, of course it's not an original idea, but the way that you do it, you'll never be able to copy the masters. You know, the masters, they did their own thing, and even if you are the most technically savvy person in the world, there will be something missing. There will always be something that's slightly different. That's why I really love like unconventional framing. Like even in documentary, I would rather see like that part of someone's face than, you know, a traditional sit down interview like the one we're doing now. You know, I think that. I think. Well, I mean, I'm thinking about in films. Yeah. But you know, and I think also like there's things to be said about the way that you capture an image. For example, if you see in really great films, in times of great turmoil for a character, I would rather see them from behind than see their face, because seeing their face again is exposition. If the character's crying, you know what you're trying to tell the audience to feel. Seeing them from behind leaves that open to interpretation. And it, depending on the frame style, obviously if you shoot it very wide, the possibilities in front of them are endless. So it's sort of the metaphor of that, rather than boxing them in and seeing them crying and knowing that we're supposed to feel that they're sad and for some reason we should feel sad. I would rather feel that anything can happen from this point onward. So yeah, and also I like really weird films.
Okay.
I mean, one of my favorite filmmakers is Harmony Korine. So one of my favorite films of all time is called Gomo, which really, ultimately, if you see it or if you watch it after this, I mean, first of all, I'll have to give the disclaimer that you will be disturbed. It is a very disturbing film. It's loose. The plot is loosely that there was this tornado in this small town in Ohio, and it's just the people in this town. It's almost like a documentary. There's only like one or two real actors. He casted the entire film in a Walmart parking lot in an afternoon. And it's very, very strange. It is like next level bizarre. But I love this. And I love the style that he does this in and the way that he lets stories sort of organically happen. And it's almost like vignettes rather than a plot. But then on the flip side of that, one of my other favorite films of all time is Jaws. So, which is like Hollywood.
Classic.
As Hollywood. But because I feel that Jaws is the only film that ever changed the world. And by that, I mean, sharks weren't a scary thing before Jaws came out. And as soon as Jaws came out, people were terrified to go in the water. And people fishermen went out and killed sharks by the thousands, to the point where Spielberg had to go out and publicly beg people to stop killing sharks. But even to this day, if you've seen Jaws, even if you haven't seen Jaws, and you go into the ocean, in your head, in the back of your head, you hear da-na, da-na. You know what I mean? So for me, this movie changed the collective psychology of the world. And it's so powerful. You don't see the shark for more than 2 minutes in the entire film. It's ridiculous when you think about it, because it's they had this animatronic shark that didn't work, and like when you know about like the background of this film, it was a disaster. But for me, it's incredible because it changed me, and I have the movie poster tattooed on my thigh. The whole of my thigh is the Jaws movie.
Jaws.
I think Spielberg is one of those directors that can like affect like the most largest targeted audience in the world. Like he really could, like you would have a child watch the film and he would be influenced by it, and then you would have a really like old person watch the film. And I haven't seen as many filmmakers who can
well, I mean, he's got Hollywood, he's got the formula down. You know, like he's a master. I mean, I don't like a lot of his films. I'm not huge into a lot of Hollywood films, but I think Jaws, I mean, there's a handful obviously that are incredible. But yeah, I don't know why I'm talking about this, but
no, I actually wanted to add like the idea that you mentioned earlier, the fact that like you kind of give the audience certain space to imagine things. I feel like the benefit of that is that when people can think by themselves, there's kind of more discussion around the film. Because when you just give them everything, then there are times like me and my wife, we like to go watch film almost every week before, and there are films that after we watch it, we don't talk about it anymore. Like we just go back home and we never talked about it again. Like Fast and Furious or those type of movies. But there are films that we just like we talk about it for days. Like we literally debate about certain aspect just because the director decided not to show it in the film. Then we'll be like, yes, I think it's because of that, and because we saw certain things. But even though there's like this debate, I feel like that's the point of the film. They want you to talk about it, and they want people to have different ideas about it. Like it's not always like you don't always need a fact from those films, right?
Of course. I mean, you know, every filmmaker, if you go to film school, you're taught the hero's journey. And I mean, that's like the basis of, you know, almost every film, especially like the Star Wars films. As much as I learned that and I understand that and I know the importance of it, I like to throw that out. Like I would prefer a story that jumps around and doesn't follow the traditional filmmaking, you know, repertoire. Like it's just, it gets stale, you know? I mean, how many times have you watched a movie and you go, okay, I know what's going to happen next. Like, it doesn't matter how hard the filmmaker tries, you know what's coming, and you know when someone's gonna die, and you know when, you know, someone's gonna pop out from around a corner and scare you. You know, it's like there are these sort of cliches in film that you can't escape. But at the same time, you know, I understand the importance of these films as well, because films, in essence, were always meant for escapism. And this is to go and sit in a cinema for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and escape your life. Go into a fantasy, go into a new world, experience something that will make you forget about your work from the day, or your stresses, or your, you know, the depression you're in, or any of these things. That's why Marvel movies are so successful, because so much of this world is so fucking depressing.
Yeah.
So people want to go and they want to watch Spider-Man swing around and save the day for a couple hours so that they can forget that there's a war going on, or there's a famine, or I mean, and there's also people that aren't that deep thinkers too. They just don't. They're just like, hey man, Vin Diesel just jumped 2 bridges and into a building in a Nissan, and that's fucking amazing. Like, I mean, sure, I get it. Like, it's exciting for some people, but I mean, I don't think that way. So I don't know. But I want to just quickly jump back to when you said you were talking about like my work being influenced like West and East. And I think that there's something really important to be said, that the people you collaborate with means so much, because everyone knows you can't make a film alone.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you kind of can. It could be a little bit shitty.
Yeah.
But like for me, for the past, 10 years, I've been working with the same DOP.
Okay.
So Christopher Moon, he's an incredible cinematographer. He shoots almost everything that I do, and working with him now, I mean, now we can communicate without speaking. Like when we're on set, he knows what I want to achieve. I know that he's always going to try to find the best way to do that, and he'll bring new ideas to the table that I didn't think about. And he'll frame up something and be like, is this what you want? And I'll say, sort of, but like, let's try to do something a little bit different with it. And then he'll say, okay, cool, like, let's do this. And he'll bring something to the table that, I would have never thought about, and it elevates the work even higher. And, I think that when you find a working relationship with, especially as a director, with a DOP, and you guys can have that kind of like open discussion and understand each other's sort of wavelength, it's the most important thing in film. Like, you can't do it without those kind of people.
And also save you some time.
So shout out to Chris.
Yeah. Shout out to you, Chris. And it also saves you some time, right? Because your workflow between like you and him, probably like very quickly, you understand and he understands you. And so you don't have to spend a lot of time like when you work with somebody who you had just met,
For sure.
A lot of distances has been already cut.
That's not saying we don't butt heads. We've had screaming matches with each other, but it definitely, it makes life so much easier when you know that you don't have to worry about, is the image going to be amazing? Like, I know when he frames something up, it's going to be amazing. So, and then I have to, focus on directing actors or, the story or anything like that, or in a lot of cases, because what we do here is a lot of commercial stuff, is making sure that what the client is expecting of us is translated onto the screen, which is also why me and Chris butt heads a lot.
I am curious, like, what kind of workflow do you have though? Because like when I saw some of your works that Ibrahim showed me, it's like how we mentioned earlier, when you shot these Middle Eastern like elements in your commercial, usually when I saw other people who don't really understand the culture, the thing that they shoot, they took everything from face value. And so it looked very cringe when I see it. Like I know someone who shot this, he doesn't understand the culture. But when I saw the things that you shot, it's like, I know that you have a deep understanding of what you're shooting. So it doesn't have that weird, vibe about this film. It's like you're trying to show something that maybe you just learned about. So you just try to put it into camera. Like how's the process of you creating a commercial? Like, do you start with the concept, the story, or do you start with framing? What is it like?
Okay, well, I mean, first point I would say is that I am the type of person who wants to dive into a culture head first. And I want to know everything about it, and I want to be thoroughly ingrained in that and educated, because it's the only way to truly experience something unique. Yeah. So lucky for me, my wife was born here, and her family have been here since I think like the early 80s, and they've seen the city build, and their contacts and their understanding of the country. So they were sharing that with me from a very early on time in our relationship, and I also love exploring. So I would just get in my car, drive around the country, try and find abandoned buildings, try and find unique landscapes, that kind of stuff, meeting Qatari people, trying to like spend time with them, understand their culture from their point of view. I think that you can't truly translate that onto screen if you don't have that and that education and that like firsthand experience. Now, to answer your question properly, like how do we start with commercials? So it's a wildly different genre than like traditional filmmaking, because you're dealing with corporate needs. So a very direct message from a client needs to come across in this. So whether it's a telecoms company wants to make sure people know that they have the best network anywhere, or an airline has the best service, or any number of things that are like key selling points for that company. Now we also work with agencies, so with advertising agencies. So sometimes they'll have already sold a creative to their client before it comes to us. So they'll come to us and say, here's what the client likes, this is what they've accepted, this is what they're paying for. We want your director's treatment on that. And sometimes there's a lot of flexibility with what I'm allowed to do and change. Other times I can't change anything. So then it just comes down to, how do I work with these non-actors? Because in Qatar there's really no actors. They're all just like people who look okay on camera. And then also, how do I make a location really interesting? So, I think the process from writing the treatment, getting it approved, going on location recce's, finding the most interesting parts of that location to stage scenes, and then just, trying to create dynamic compositions that I like, but also tick the boxes of the client. So it's quite it's a power struggle at times, and it's also, I never wanted to make commercials. Like as an American, you are bombarded with commercials. Like you have a TV show is 23 minutes, and the other 7 minutes of that 30-minute slot are commercials, and you just hit with commercials all the time, and you hate them. You're just like, I don't want commercials. Like, just show me the show. And I also, I still like to hold on to those sort of like punk rock roots, and like, fuck the system, like, I don't want to buy your shit. Capitalism is the devil, all this kind of thing. Like, I don't want to help sell shit that I don't believe in. And, at times you kind of have to like you have to put your morals aside a little bit and say, okay, well, you know what? I need to put food on the table for my daughter. I need to, make sure that this company is still up and running and I can pay people's salaries and, so it's a difficult. It was a difficult balance, but then there are times where a client comes to us because they love our style, and they say, just do what you do. For example, I made a film for Mondrian Hotel.
Okay, yeah.
And and it ended up doing really well in like fashion film festival circuit and all this stuff. But they gave me full creative license to do whatever I wanted. And I mean, I ran with that. Like I brought a gazelle into their hotel and let it run around, and I brought horses into their ballroom, and the craziest imagery I could think of. Because we don't get that freedom very often, I was like, we're going for it. And they were like, yes, we love it, let's do it. And I was like, holy shit, I can't believe they're letting me do this. But yeah, I mean, commercial filmmaking is a totally different beast.
Yeah.
I wonder, how do you balance the like, do you do any side project on your own without like just you just go out and shoot some stuff even now? Like, I know you do it when you were younger, but now that you're running a company, how do you release your artistic passion?
Well, I wish I did it more often. Like, to be honest, I still write a lot of scripts, and I have all the crew and the equipment and the means to make them, but it seems like I always help other people make their films rather than make my own. So I've sort of taken more of like a producer role when it comes to filmmaking lately. I want to shift back, but yeah, I do some projects where it's just like a passion project, or I just want to do something. But I guess now the way that I express creativity is with my daughter, like just hanging out with her and like drawing pictures, and she paints my shoes for me, and we do like
I saw your Vans.
Yeah, and I sort of like, I channel that energy into raising her and like trying to give her the best childhood possible. And I don't know, maybe that's like, maybe every parent does that, but I find that most rewarding, more rewarding than any film I've ever made or anything that I probably will make in the future. So
that's awesome. Also, that's for you, Kai, to take. he has a child as well.
How old is your kid?
9 months.
9. Oh man,
very fresh.
Hey, you're just entering the early stages, but I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I mean, the rewards, it's insane. The first time that child tells you, "Daddy, I love you," or wants to give you a hug.
Oh my god.
Oh, dude, it blows your mind. It totally blows your mind.
I'm already very emotional every time I see him, so like I can't wait for it. It's my son though. He is a boy.
That's amazing. But you know what? I'll tell you what. Even still, like my daughter is now 3.5. There are times where I find myself like just walking into her room and sitting by her bed while she's asleep, and I just cry, and I just like.
Yeah, I cry a lot whenever I see him.
I'll tell you what, man, you get real soft real fast. I keep talking about like my punk rock roots, and now I'm also talking about crying next to a sleeping child.
Yeah. I guess should we do you have anything else, Kai? Should we wrap
Yeah,
it
I think
up,
it's about time, yeah.
Yeah. Like one last thing, what kind of advice do you have for young filmmakers? I guess running a business or
well, first thing I would say, don't try to run a business. because that's where you stop making films. That it's your whole mindset has to shift to be able to do that, especially if the business is not started with your own money. If you have like investors and stuff like that, then it's. But I would say, for filmmakers, 2 things that I find really important. One, don't go to university. Don't go to film school. Take the money, the insane amount of money that you would pay to a film school, buy yourself a camera, and just go out and start shooting stuff. Learn as you go, because one day with a camera in your hands and the complete freedom, you will learn so much more about yourself than you will in years in school. I do think that there's it's important to know the the technical aspects of film and film theory and all these but you can learn anything on YouTube now. You can find out anything you want to know about film or cameras or editing on YouTube, or master classes or any of this kind of stuff. The other thing I would say for young filmmakers or any filmmaker, I mean people that are even way more experienced than me, is and to quote one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life, Ashik Khan, always try. The only way you will learn is by trying, and you will only be able to learn from your mistakes. Go out there, do it. If you think it's right at the time, do it, and then if it turns out to be wrong, fix it the next time around. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. Every film you ever make, you will hate eventually, and you'll want to make a better one, and that will keep driving you forward. If you make a masterpiece in your first film, which is like almost impossible to do, you'll never be able to reach that level again, because you've set a bar for yourself of like perfection.
It's very hard to reach.
Nothing's perfect. Just do it. Figure out what works, what doesn't work. Correct it for the next time. Don't get hung up on a project for too long. You got to close that chapter eventually and move on to the next one.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So much stuff to take away, and thank you so much, Justin, for being on the show. I also like to, I hate the film school, but every time I also think that it's also maybe like good for making connections sometimes, because we also met at film school. We met in an English class, imagine. But I agree with you. Like I think like there's a lot of bullshit around the system when it comes to film school, and that takes away a lot of your time. Perhaps investing in yourself by buying a camera and going out and trying and learning new things. Perhaps that's the most optimal way. But thank you so much.
I could be totally wrong too.
No. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
Me too. I agree. Yeah.
We both agree, probably.
Your last guest would be like, "What are you saying? What are you, out of your mind?" But listen, I want to say too to your last guest, like that was an incredible. I mean, I was driving my car going, "I am so dumb." Like this is like, I love listening to this. This is so brilliant.
Guy, should send this thing.
Oh yeah, I should tell her that.
Yeah. Nice. Would you like to say anything, Kai?
No, thank you so much. Like I love seeing people who are passionate about film, because I can like truly see that from Justin, and it's like I'm really happy to talk to people who are passionate, because I don't see a lot of people like like you out there.
Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Honestly, it's an honor for you to be here and on our humble show. So
Thank you so much.